Buenas tardes, bienvenidos. Cesar Chavez's birthday, something we've been celebrating for a number of years, and I'm very happy our new city manager, Scott Ochoa, is continuing the tradition. So I want to call my two colleagues to the stage.
Buenas tardes. It's great to see you all here today. Thank you for coming out again. I've been to this for many years, and there's always more and more people here. So it's great to have everyone come to celebrate the life of Cesar Chavez, a great man who fought for the rights of workers, the rights for humankind, really.
Thank you, everyone. It is great to be here celebrating the life of a great American, Cesar Chavez, who worked so hard to improve wages, living conditions, and the general quality of life for laborers, not just in the fields and the farms, but throughout our industrial economy. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and let's give it up for Cesar Chavez and his great work.
Thank you. Cesar Chavez was an inspiration to all of us, and our speaker today, Ruben Duran, is going to give us a good idea of what Cesar Chavez meant to him. So anyway, it's a pleasure having you here, and we'll get on with the program. All right, we are going to listen to and watch some dancing flamenco.
As I said, I've known Ruben Duran for many years, probably going on 16 years at this point. We have become close friends, not only because we work in much of the same type of business. He is an attorney working for cities. I've worked as a city administrator for quite some time, working with cities in various capacities. But I've gotten to know Ruben as a man, as a father, as a husband, and as a leader in this community. So with that, I'd like to introduce un hombre, un esposo, un padre, un amigo, y mi compadre, Ruben Duran.
For a while, I felt like I haven't known Scott as long as this microphone was vibrating. But Scott's right. We've known each other for a long time. I'm honored to be his friend, and I've been so impressed with the way that he serves his community, whether it's where he lives in Monrovia, when I met him now in the great city of Glendale. He's a fine administrator, a fine friend, and your community, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe you're lucky to have him. I know he's very happy to be here with you. Let me thank you very much for asking me to be here with you today. I'm extremely honored, very privileged to to say a few words about a man that we've all heard of. Some of us have spoken about a little bit already. We're celebrating his birth, which is tomorrow, actually, March 31st. Not March 30th, but tomorrow's Easter. So I think we did a good thing turning it to today and making it a long weekend celebration. I had a picture that, if you wouldn't mind bringing the easel out, I'd appreciate that. A little bit of audio visual for my presentation today. I hope you can see it. I'll talk about it a little bit later. Today we honor a wise teacher, an inspiring leader, and a true visionary. But to truly honor him, we must do more than say words of praise. We must learn his lessons and put his views into practice so that we may be truly free at last. Those are pretty good words, right? I wish I could say that I wrote them, but I didn't. Those were words of Cesar Chavez. He spoke them on January 12, 1990, giving a speech about somebody else. Can anybody guess who he was talking about? January 12th of 1990? Anybody, kids? Cesar Chavez was talking about somebody. Who was he talking about? If you truly want to live his dream.
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King, that's right. Cesar Chavez was honoring the memory of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And he spoke those words, but as I saw them and as I read them, I thought to myself, he's written the first part of my speech for me because it's true. We're here to honor Cesar Chavez's life, his legacy, his memory. We're enjoying great food. By the way, in the city of Glendale, thank you for the great tacos. Great food, a lot of entertainment for the kids. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful community that you have here. And looking out and seeing the people at the tables and seeing the people around the cars, seeing people climbing rock walls, that's a great celebration of your community, of Latinos in your community, of the diversity in your community. And I applaud you and I celebrate that with you. I'm so glad to be here. We have some kids here in the audience, I hope. And I'm going to do a little bit of, I was never a teacher, but I really should have been, I think. I wanted to be a teacher. So if you're a middle schooler, a high schooler, or an elementary schooler, children, muchachos, estudiantes, estoy hablando a ti, I'm talking to you. So if I say Cesar Chavez or Cesar Chavez, tell me what you think. I see some kids here in the audience, I know some of you by name, I'm going to call you out. Give me one word or one phrase. If I say Cesar Chavez, what comes into your mind? Great leader, that's a good one. Children, anybody? Cesar Chavez, are you learning about Cesar Chavez in school? I hope. I'm going to call out Mr. Cifuentes, if he doesn't mind. Adrian Cifuentes, the guest here from South Pasadena. If I say Cesar Chavez, what do you think? A leader? What are you doing today? Adrian? A farm worker, that's right. He was a farm worker. At the core, he was a farm worker. Someone said he was a leader back there. Maybe you're thinking grapes. I know that when I was a young child growing up in school, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. If I heard Cesar Chavez, I thought of grapes. Don't buy grapes. Don't eat grapes. And something very simple like that. But I think it says a lot about the importance and the significance that one person, the difference that one person can make in the world. And so today I want to talk to you about, when I hear the name Cesar Chavez, what are the words or phrases that come to my mind? Before I get there, though, I want to, I can't walk over here because the mic's not long enough, but I want you to take a look at this portrait if you could. It's a picture that I have hanging on the wall in my office, and I've had it there for maybe 8 or 10 years. I don't even remember where I got it, quite frankly. I think it was just a poster and I had it framed. But I got it for a few reasons. Believe it or not, the main reason I got it is that as soon as I saw it, it reminded me of my father. My father is not related to Cesar Chavez, but he has a lot in common with him, actually. Cesar Chavez was born in 1927 in Yuma, Arizona. Born here in the United States, an American citizen of Mexican descent. Some of us call those Chicanos. I call myself a Chicano. Cesar Chavez was born in 1927 in Arizona. My dad was born in 1929 in Arizona. Probably not too far from Yuma, where Cesar was born. Cesar Chavez worked in the fields as a very young man. His father worked in the fields, and he didn't go to a whole lot of school. He only went to school through, does anybody know? Anybody guess? Did he graduate high school? Children? Cesar Chavez did not graduate high school. He went through the 8th grade. He had to stop working in the 8th grade because his family lost their farm through some questionable dealings, quite frankly. There were some bad business deals, a bad loan. His father was injured, couldn't work for a year, so Cesar stopped going to school so he could go work full time to provide for his family. He reminds me of my dad in that way because my dad only went to the 7th grade. And he stopped working so he could support his family, first in Arizona, and then they moved west into the Ochoa Valley in the Indio, and then up through the Central Valley. My dad worked in the fields. We didn't talk a lot about that, quite frankly, but I knew about it and it inspired me. The other reason that I bought this portrait is that if you look into his eyes, he looks a little bit serio, a little bit serious, a little bit purposeful. It's not a very happy portrait at first, but there's warmth, there's understanding, there's a definite purpose in this man's face. And I have it hanging in front of my desk so that when I'm sitting, I can look at it. And it gives me inspiration for two reasons. One, because of the life that Cesar Chavez lived, and two, because it reminds me of my dad. So I asked for a word, someone said leader, someone said farm worker. For me, when I hear the phrase Cesar Chavez, I think justice. Justice. Cesar Chavez worked so hard. He fought, he struggled, he fought figuratively, he didn't fight violently. For justice for farm workers. Because as he was growing up and what he saw in his life, and then as he became a young man, he was a community organizer. The working conditions for working people in the fields were horrific. I mean, just some stuff that we couldn't even imagine today. And it wasn't even that long ago. It was 40, 50 years ago, 30 years ago in some instances. So Cesar, even though he didn't go to college, even though he didn't take any special training, even though he wasn't elected to a public office, he saw it as his duty to work for justice for his community. And it's true, his community was mostly Mexicanos, Mexican Americans at the time. But he also partnered with other working groups, other nationalities. He saw the value of coalitions. He espoused and he practiced the core value of nonviolence, which goes back to the Martin Luther King angle. Martin Luther King, his struggle for civil rights was based on the thought of, look, we get things done in this world through nonviolence. If someone strikes you, what do? You strike back? You turn the other cheek. You see, you turn the other cheek. It's a lesson that Cesar Chavez took from Martin Luther King, and in turn, Dr. King took that lesson from whom? Anybody? Gandhi, exactly. Mahatma Gandhi in India, the first part of the 20th century, was the architect of this method of social change. And that was no matter what they do to you, no matter how badly they treat you, they spit on you, they deride you, you are never going to engage in violence to get what you want. The power of your message will come through the power of your love, through the fact that you protest peacefully, you don't take up arms, you don't use violence to stop violence, you use peace and love to stop violence. It's a very powerful idea, it's a very powerful tool. It worked in India, it worked for Dr. King, for the most part. Obviously, there's still the struggle going on today, but Cesar Chavez recognized the power of nonviolence, and he incorporated that as the core foundation of his work with farm workers, excuse me. The other thing that, when it comes to justice, the other thing that Cesar Chavez stood for, in my mind, was something a little bit ahead of his time. Today, in the 21st century, the term environmental justice is something that we hear thrown around as professionals working for public agencies, as elected officials. The term environmental justice means something. Hey, you know what? We have to watch out for the environment, and we have to take care of the plants and the air and the water and our children. But Cesar Chavez was fighting for environmental justice 50, 40 years ago, in a time when most people weren't. He was fighting to halt the use of pesticides because they harmed the people who were working the fields, and they harmed the fields and the environment. So I like the fact that he was a trailblazer. I also think of the word humility when I think of Cesar Chavez. And it's a little bit in that portrait, actually. He wasn't a very flashy or showy man. He did speak a lot, but he spoke not to hear himself speak. He spoke to give a voice to people who didn't have a voice, whether it be against the growers, or with politicians, or later on in his life, just in the community. And he said something that I find very instructive. He said, "You are never strong enough that you don't need help." Because by that time in his life, he had a very successful movement. He was recognized. He was sought after as a speaker. And he realized that the work that his union did, the United Farm Workers, had made some gains, significant improvements in people's lives. But he says, "You're never strong enough that you don't need help." Something that we need to remember in our daily lives, I think. In terms of his humble beginnings and his humility in life, it's reported that Cesar Chavez never earned more than $6,000 a year. He never owned a home, he never had a mortgage, lucky him. He never owned a car. But that didn't define him. And that's a lesson, quite frankly, that I think I struggle with every day. And it's a lesson I need to remember from a great man like him, and maybe it's a lesson some of us need to remember and learn, is that you're not defined by your possessions, by the house that you live in, by the car that you drive. You are defined by the love that's in your heart and the work that you do. And he was a man who lived that every day of his life. Think about it. We're here in the city of Glendale celebrating his life, having great food, enjoying each other's company. There are events like this happening in other cities throughout the state, and other states, quite frankly, throughout the United States, remembering and honoring this humble man from Yuma, Arizona. As I was learning a little bit more about his life, I thought to myself, well, he didn't come to these things on his own. There's something that formed him. And it's another thing that I think I share in common with him and maybe many of you, that Cesar Chavez was inspired by his mother to do a lot of the things that he did, to live the way he lived his life. And she lived much longer than him. A blessing, I guess, for her and her family. A tragedy that we lost him so young in his early 60s. But she lived until she was 99. And when she was buried in San Jose in 1994, I think, maybe 1993, I apologize, he gave her eulogy. And he talked extensively about the work that she did in her little community, whether it be in the farm camps or his home. And he said this about her. He said, "Our mother taught us not to be afraid to fight, to stand up for our rights. But she also taught us not to be violent. We didn't even know enough at the time to call it nonviolence. But from an early age, through her dichos and her little lessons, she would always talk to us about not fighting, not responding in kind." And so this goes to the next word that, when I think of Cesar Chavez, comes to my mind, and that is courage. The dude was a brave dude. He was strong, he was courageous, he didn't back down, and we learn from his own words that he got that lesson from his mother. He says, "She taught her children to reject that part of her culture, which too often tells its young men that you're not a man if you don't fight back. She would say, 'No, mijo, it's best to turn the other cheek. God gave you senses like eyes and mind and tongue, and you can get out of anything. It takes two to fight, and one can't do it alone.'" Valuable lesson. It's a lesson I try to teach my own sons as they're going through their life. He was also courageous in just the leadership role that he took, organizing farm workers, organizing a national boycott on grapes. How many of you remember going to the grocery store and maybe reaching for a bag of grapes and someone telling you, "Don't buy grapes, don't buy grapes"? I remember that. I was a young man, I see the council members, the mayor also remember that. It wasn't that long ago, quite frankly. I think Scott was already in college. But that's a significant thing, if you think about it, because food is essential to our lives, right? Yeah, we can live without grapes, but quite frankly, I love grapes. I love the fact that my family can enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables. But Cesar was telling people, don't buy grapes because the growers of grapes mistreat their workers. A very simple message. And in that simplicity, Cesar showed not only his courage, but his intelligence, because he realized that sometimes the only way to get through to people is through their pocketbook. Economics is so important in this society. And so Cesar Chavez thought to himself, well, I can give speeches, I can do marches, but the growers don't seem to be listening to me. We can yell at each other across the picket lines, but they'll still bring in teamsters to work, they'll still bring in scabs to work. They will still get their grapes picked, and they did. The growers got their grapes picked. So Cesar said, okay, well, if the grapes are being picked, what happens if they're not being bought? What happens if they sit on the store shelves, at the grocery store or wherever, and they rot? That little tool, that little device, that simple act started in California and spread nationwide. There were people in Minnesota not buying grapes. There were people in Texas and Colorado and New Jersey and Florida knowing if we buy grapes, we're hurting these people. And so the growers felt the difference in their pocketbook, and they came to the table, and they finally signed a contract with the organization that Cesar had founded, United Farm Workers. And he built the organization from the ground up. I mean, there were no organizations, no unions, no representatives for farm workers until he came on the scene, and they made a difference even to this day. Finally, the last word that I think of when I hear the phrase Cesar Chavez is family or familia. And it's great to see the families here and here outside, young children with their parents and see some grandparents. Cesar Chavez valued the importance of family. And when I look at his picture and I think of him and I think of my dad, I think of my family. I think of my four older brothers and my twin sister, and I think of our extended family, and how important it is to love those people, to work hard for those people. My dad worked his entire life as a laborer, working on cars, painting cars. He worked that hard so I didn't have to, so I could go to school and work in an office. And I count myself blessed for that. Cesar Chavez worked hard for his family and for other families. And finally, the idea of family extends to community. Cesar Chavez was about community, whether it be his immediate family or the people working around him in the camps, or ultimately all the people in the union that he represented. That was his familia, his community, and he would do anything for them. He even would fast and deprive himself of food so that his message could be carried to the world, because in those days, when you fast in those days, a long time ago, right? When he did his fasts, it gained national attention for his cause. So he went one day, 25 days without eating, to draw attention to the struggles of the farmer. Those were the sacrifices that he made for his family. But he also enjoyed his family, and he left a legacy of a family that enjoys life. I'll close just by telling you about an email that I got yesterday. It was a forwarded email from a friend of mine who's a reporter, and it was from a woman named Ara Chavez. Does anybody know Ara Chavez? Or heard the name Ara Chavez? Ara Chavez is one of Cesar Chavez's nieces, and she lives here in Los Angeles. She actually lives in a home that the United Farm Workers bought in the 60s. It's near USC, and it was used as a base for organizing back in the 60s and 70s when they were doing their important work. She and her husband, I guess, had bought the house. And they have started a tradition where every Friday, they will have what's called a Friday night potluck. And they invite anybody they know or anybody that anybody else knows to come to their home, to bring in a dish or a drink or a dessert, and to just share life. They tie into a community service day, which I think is excellent, but they're doing it for a full year. 52 Friday nights of potluck. And they do that, I believe, and I hadn't been yet because I just heard about it, but my wife and I were talking on the way here. We want to take our sons to go and to talk a little bit, to convivir, to live and share about Cesar's life, about his work, but also just about our own lives and our own communities and our own work. Because above all else, the lesson that I learned from Cesar Chavez is that anybody can make a difference. You don't have to go to a fancy school, you don't have to drive a fancy car, you don't have to work in a fancy office. All you have to do is care. That's all you have to do, and then act in a simple way. So that, my friends, is the lesson that I take from his life. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for the opportunity to share these words with you, and God bless you all.
Ruben Duran, ladies and gentlemen.
So please welcome Zenyeliztli Azteca.